and I give the call to the Honourable Shelley Payne.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past, present and emerging. Thank you, President, and congratulations on your new appointment. I would also like to congratulate all members here on their win, especially Labour members on our historic election win. I would like to start by first giving a big thanks to this WA Labour government, and in particular our Premier Mark McGowan, for keeping us safe through this coronavirus pandemic. I would also like to thank Health Minister Roger Cook for all his hard work. I'm very thankful to be living in Western Australia now, enjoying our freedom and strong economy. We as citizens had to endure lockdown in our homes, but one might say Premier Mark McGowan and Minister Roger Cook endured a more gruelling lockdown in front of the media nearly every day for a year. We don't have the privilege of being in this place without some help and support, and I would like to give a big thanks to the Honourable Darren West for all his support and trust he put in me and helped to get me here today. Honourable Darren West has put in a massive effort across regional Western Australia since his election in 2013 as the lone Labour member for the agricultural region, an area covering nearly 300,000 square kilometres. If I can quote from his first speech, "The agricultural region is rather large, and I look forward to the enormous challenge." His hard work during his first term helped to achieve for the first time 2 Labour members elected in the agricultural region, with Honourable Laurie Graham being elected alongside him in 2017. 4 more years of hard work in 2021 saw the seat of Geraldton being won, and the first woman to ever hold the seat with the election of Lara Dalton. It also saw for the first time 3 Labour members elected in the agricultural region, with the election of Honourable Darren West, myself and Honourable Sandra Carr. And as you witnessed yesterday, with Honourable Darren West being the first member to be sworn into this House, he even managed to get himself elected first in the agricultural region. Well done. I'd also like to acknowledge Laurie Graham's effort over the past 4 years, whose seat I've taken here. He put in a huge effort in Geraldton throughout the recent election campaign, helping to get Laura Dalton elected, and has provided me valuable guidance and advice. I'd also like to thank him for the hard work he has done throughout his term, supporting the Esperance community where I live. The review into the Esperance port, tabling petitions on behalf of our community, and support generally to our community when we were going through a difficult time. Honourable Darren West organised a farewell dinner for Laurie Graham in Northam, and I know Laurie, who is not here today, would have liked to thank Minister Ellery, Minister Dawson, Minister McTiernan and Honourable Pierre Yang for attending his farewell dinner. For those of us living in the regions, it means a lot to have ministers that always make a big effort to support us out in the regions. I would particularly like to thank Minister McTiernan for her commitment and hard work in her role as Minister for Agriculture and Regional Development. Minister McTiernan is highly regarded across the agricultural region in areas which would probably not be called Labour heartland. Thank you for your many trips to Esperance, remembering the farmers there and ensuring they are included in programs such as the recent Digital Farm Grants program. I'd like to thank everyone who worked on a campaign in the agricultural region, the lower house candidates who did a tough job in a very challenging electorate, Brad Willis in Rowe, Michelle Nelson in Central Wheatbelt, and Barney Norton in Moore. Donna Plummer and Jody Ingram, who put in a huge effort supporting these regional campaigns. The support from Campaign Central, headed up by Tim Picton, Ellie Whitaker, and David Cann. The team up in Geraldton working with Lara Dalton, Honourable Sandra Carr and Laurie Graham, and all those helping out at our 102 polling booths across the agricultural region. And finally, my faithful Labour supporters in Esperance, Kevin and Colleen O'Dwyer, Wayne and Sue Batchelor, and Dale Piercy. I'd like to make a special mention of Dale Piercy, who has been a great inspiration to me over the last 5 years. Dale is a long-standing Labour supporter. She was number 2 on the agriculture region ticket 20 years ago today, a time when number 2 was thought to be unwinnable. And 20 years later today, we have had 3 elected. Thank you, Dale, for bringing me into the Labour family. I'd like to thank my family for their support, especially my family that can't travel to be here today. My parents were both born in London. They met at Imperial College when my dad was studying there and my mum worked there. After my dad finished his PhD at Cambridge University, he took on a postdoctoral fellowship in Canada for 1 year. They never left. When we asked as kids why they stayed, apparently it was much quicker to get a telephone installed than with British Telecom. So my parents stayed in Canada and went on to have 4 children, and my siblings and I grew up in the capital city of Canada, Ottawa. My dad traveled a lot, having been a geophysicist, working with the Canadian government, helping developing countries around the world with their airborne mapping for mineral exploration. He instilled a love of travel in us all. Our family has benefited greatly from being part of the Commonwealth. In fact, my siblings and I used to compete with regards to the number of passports that we could collect. Based on my experiences, I do believe we are fortunate to have this bond with other countries strategically located around the globe to call on for support. I studied engineering at university with a minor in environmental engineering, as I had always been passionate about the environment. Being a traveller, I soon discovered exchange programs. I studied a year in England, making new bonds with cousins and aunts, had a couple of summer work placements at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and then later had another exchange program to the University of Queensland in Brisbane. It's a sore spot for my dad. For all the countries he had travelled to around the world, I beat him to Australia. But he has made up for it by travelling here with my mum more than 20 times in the past 20 years, even managing to secure work contracts with the Australian Geological Survey Organisation. I then went to London to attend Imperial College, where my parents had met, to study my master's in business and the environment. Following this, I was accepted for a leadership development program, which involved a year-long placement at the Thailand Development Research Institute in Bangkok, conducting policy research and writing research papers on a variety of environmental issues. And here I qualified as an environmental auditor. Heading back to Canada at 27, I recall thinking perhaps it was time to settle down, get a real job, and maybe go to a few Sunday night family dinners. I remember thinking at the time I just wanted to do something that made a difference. When I arrived home, it was about time that my dad took retirement from a long career with the Canadian government, and he was looking for something to keep himself busy. Also about that time, there was a lot of community concern about our nuclear power stations and whether the surrounding communities were being exposed to radiation emanating from the nuclear reactors. Being a geophysicist and having worked with natural radiation through his career, this was something my dad thought that he could help with. So I convinced him to start his own company and solicit his skills to the nuclear power companies. My radiation knowledge was rather lacking, so my job was making the logos, helping prepare the tender documents, and generally trying to make us look a bit professional and like we knew what we were doing. We were quite successful, and one of our first projects was monitoring the shoreline along the edge of a nuclear power plant with a handheld radiation detector. My dad set up his old purple and green backpack with a wooden garden stake sticking out the top to tape his GPS to. I would suggest perhaps instead of this 20-year-old backpack, maybe we should get a new one, and perhaps we should paint the garden stake black so it didn't look like a wooden garden stake. And I'd suggest perhaps a couple of magnetic stickers with our logo to stick on the side of our rusted-out Subaru Outback. And then they would ask for our risk management plan, to which we looked at each other, wondering, what exactly should we put in a risk management plan for surveying a nuclear power plant? Well, we put together a few words, formatted it nicely, bought a first aid kit for the boot of the car, and off we went. I never managed to get him to part with his old purple and green backpack that in his view still functioned fine, but I think we did paint the garden stake. After the survey, my job was to read the report my dad had written and spend a significant amount of time trying to understand it, and then write it in layman's terms, so I figured at least the people we sent it to would understand it, and use that fancy equation editor in Microsoft Word to make these hugely complicated radiation decay equations look nice in the report. Things were going well, and we had done a few interesting projects. And then, with time between contracts, my dad announced that our family would be heading to Perth for Christmas to meet up with cousins from the UK who were studying at the University of Western Australia. At our age, then spanning between 25 and 30, my siblings and I still travelled as a family on holidays, provided it entailed free flights across the globe, usually to a ski resort, but this time to Perth. Perth was somewhere that seemed just so far away and somewhere I never thought I'd get to. The east coast of Australia, manageable, but Perth, just that bit too far. The furthest airport in the world from my hometown of Ottawa. You can fly either way round to get back, or even straight over the top of the North Pole, I was shocked to discover one time while looking at the flight path on board. even circumvent the planet just to visit family. Like when the first of the 5 flights it takes you to get home is cancelled due to a snowstorm, and the flight desk tells you, "Unfortunately, Mrs. Payne, you will miss your connection through Los Angeles. Would you like us to route you through Hong Kong or London?" But it's not all that bad. I've had some great holiday stopovers in London, got to experience the Qantas direct flight from London to Perth twice, and I never even booked to go anywhere near London. Being the travellers we were, my sister and I devised a plan during that Christmas in Perth to travel overland to Sydney and Tasmania and head home from there. Luckily, I was working with Dad and we had no pressing projects, so I was able to go with him. So we bought a $7 book on free camping in Western Australia, picked up a $2,000 car in Bassendean, and off we went. A chance stop at a little place called Mason's Bay, chosen from our $7 book, led me to meet my husband Mark, an abalone diver, fishing for abalone from the shore using a 4-wheel motorbike, rigged up with a shucking tray on the front and an air compressor and a dive hose on the back. I didn't even know what an abalone was. So this was the start of what would be my new life in Australia. My sister and I finished the trip to Tasmania, and my sister headed home, and I headed back to Esperance. Maybe it was that Esperance crayfish that Mark flew to Tasmania with that got me. With my sister arriving home and my parents asking, "Where is Shelley? And what do you mean she's still in Australia?" This started a multitude of across-the-planet journeys in both directions, mine with an ever-expanding number of kids in tow. We used to cringe at the dollars spent on travel, carrying on my dad's tradition of remortgaging the house every year for a holiday. And the thing with having overseas family is your money gets spent on going back to the same place all the time. But now with this pandemic, we are thankful for the travel we did do. I continued on for a while helping my dad with his reports and tender documents. Being 12 hours difference was actually worked out quite well, as he'd work all day on something and pass it to me, and then I'd work all day on it too. Eventually, however, our lives started slowly drifting apart, with me having one child, then another, and getting more involved with my new life in Esperance. We managed to pretty well standardize everything, so I could mostly do myself out of a job. However, I'm very thankful to have had that fun time with him. So I carried on raising my 3 kids, helping my husband run his fishing business, doing a bit of consulting here and there when I could fit it in, but generally preoccupied with what after-school activities my kids had that day, when my next overseas holiday would be, or things like when would my husband's new shark cage be finished so he wouldn't get eaten when he went to work. I arrived back from another holiday to visit family. My kids had completed a school year in Canada with their cousins. My parents were getting older and I wanted to spend some time with them, and my kids had grown up not having a chance to regularly see their grandparents. No sooner had I arrived home when I had a knock on the door with a request to please help, as the local shire wanted to knock down our heritage jetty. "You're an engineer, you can help." I recall thinking not much more than, well, that's a stupid idea to demolish that jetty, but not perceiving that I could actually do anything about it. Esperance's State Heritage Registered Timber Jetty was highly valued by the Esperance community. It was one of only 3 heritage timber jetties remaining in the state. Our country was built on jetties. Jetties came before roads. Even as recent as the 1960s, the Premier travelled to Esperance by sea and offloaded his car onto the jetty. I have to be honest, at the time, a lot of my friends were coaching netball or basketball, and I wasn't good at that sort of thing. I didn't know much about netball, and I had always felt a little bit guilty that I wasn't doing as much as them to help out around the community. So I thought, wow, this is something I can actually help with, doing research. So I proceeded to dive in with gusto, do my research, and present it to the group. Yes, there are over 100 jetties in South Australia. Yes, there are contractors that fix them. Yes, Albany sawmills can give you all the timber you need, etc., etc. But they still said the Shire wasn't listening. "Well, go in and talk to them," I said. "Yes, okay, I'll go with you." These meetings made me come to the realization that there was a serious problem with our local government and their ability to listen, problem solve, engage with their community, and work collaboratively towards solutions. My observation has been that many small regional local governments lack the capacity to adequately address some of their more technical issues and would benefit from being able to access more support from the state government to ensure that they achieve the best outcomes for their communities. About this time, we had the state election in 2017. Esperance had moved into the agricultural region, and we began to have Labour members come to our jetty meetings, which we all felt at the time was rather strange. After all, the last time a Labour office was open in Esperance was 1989. They provided support and made suggestions and encouraged us to run for council. This was how we could affect change, from the inside. I was horrified. You mean put my face out in public? Up until then, I had preferred to help out people in the background. A few of us passionate for change ran as a block, which made it easier to hide my face among the few others. My kids had to endure weeks of Snapchat selfies from their friends making faces with my signs. Dale Piercy and I were successful, and the two of us sat in a room with 7 other hostile people who didn't quite like the trouble we were causing for them. We quickly completed our diploma in local government to ensure we would know what we were doing. We never did manage to save the jetty, but the new jetty is open now and highly used and valued by the community. I still cringe at the process, but I learned a lot, and it actually brought me here today. It was the jetty process that got me wondering, just how did decisions get made? Who actually made them, and how could we affect change? How could our community get listened to? How could the mentality change from, we know what's good for you and what you need, to tell us about your issues and how you think we can help you solve them? I could sense that this Labour government was on the right track. Until that time, I would always shake my head and think, oh my God, why are these people running the country? But this Labour government was something that I was keen to get involved with. When it came time for the federal election in 2019, I asked the Honourable Darren West, who did Labour have to run in our federal seat of O'Connor? Because I needed someone to vote for. People like me wanted someone to vote for. It didn't matter to us that the seat was said to be unwinnable. We still wanted someone we could give our vote to. No matter where you live, you still want to be able to vote for someone who is standing up for your values in your community. So, as there was nobody else yet lined up to do it, I decided to have a go. It didn't worry me that the electorate covered 1/3 of the state, spanning from Esperance to Kalgoorlie to Albany and Cawley. I was used to regional travel, having lived in Esperance for the past 20 years. But I kind of felt like the lone woman out there. On the ballot paper with 8 men, Peter Watson was in Albany and McMurray and Cawley. There was a male member for Kalgoorlie. Honourable Darren West and Honourable Laurie Graham were in the agriculture region, and Minister Dawson and Honourable Kyle McGinn were in the mining and pastoral region. All very supportive and all very helpful, but still all men. It's amazing the change we achieved for the regions at this state election, with Rebecca Stevens elected to Albany, Jodie Hans to Cawley Preston, and Ali Kent to Kalgoorlie. And we now have 2 women representing the agricultural region with myself and Honourable Sandra Carr. And we have the lovely Rosetta Sahana representing the mining and pastoral region. And we can't forget Lara Dalton's historic win in Geraldton. Do you know that wherever you live in Western Australia, you can call a female representative? Labour in this Parliament and this House now have a female representing every single square inch of Western Australia. With regard to that federal election, I want to give a special shout out to the Honourable Kyle McGinn and his Labour team in Kalgoorlie, including George Folks-Taylor and Bobby Leafield, who helped me in that election. The team worked so hard and were so keen for Labour representation. I'm so pleased now with all their hard work over the past 4 years has paid off, and they have Ali Kent elected as their member. Honourable Kyle McGinn has been an amazing and much-needed force in Kalgoorlie, somewhere that had been neglected and was lacking attention, maybe too much fly-in, fly-out, creating a slow disintegration of the city's community core. After Honourable Kyle McGinn's election in 2017, he set up his office there and stood up for the people of Kalgoorlie. This Labour win in Kalgoorlie is a credit to him and all the people that he inspired that they could make positive change. After the federal election, we calculated that with the itsy-bitsy swing to Labour we achieved in O'Connor, that it would take 100 years to win the seat. And frankly, I just didn't have time for that. But I felt there must be some way I could help bring our regional voice to this table. So I began to think about the upcoming state election and how I might be able to get involved. I feel fortunate to have had the support to run in the agricultural region at this election with the retirement of Laurie Graham, and be part of this historic election win with this Labour government being rewarded by the people of Western Australia for all their hard work in keeping our state safe through this coronavirus pandemic. With 1/4 of all Australians born overseas and nearly half with at least one parent born overseas, we can take a minute to reflect on how hard this pandemic has been on a lot of Australians being away from their family. I joke to my kids, remember when there were big planes that could take us over big oceans to other lands? They miss traveling to visit family too. I guess we took for granted our air travel, and I know we cherish our memories and are grateful for the travel that we did do. But for the many like me, we do really wonder, will we get to see our aging parents again? With regards to the number of new Australians, such as myself, I also want to touch on how hard it is being away from family, living within a different culture to the one you were brought up with. Not everyone you meet is cheery and welcoming of your colour or your accent. I guess I can count myself lucky coming to this country with English as a first language. I remember my overseas placement to Thailand, where our pre-departure training was focused not only on explaining the culture shock upon arriving in a new country, but the culture shock that we would experience when we travel back to our home countries again after being used to a new way of life, not really quite fitting in anywhere anymore. Although for the most part, people have been very accepting of my accent, some are not, and I do feel it takes a little longer for people to trust and accept me. I still get asked regularly, where are you traveling from? Which gets a little bit tiring after 20 years of hearing it. It sounds weird saying it, but interestingly, what I am grateful for is the opportunity to have been able to experience how awful racism makes you feel when you hardly get an opportunity to open your mouth, yet you're already judged as being someone to disregard. At first, I was really confused and my brain couldn't really work out what was going on. I've met bullies and people that didn't like me, but this was different. I remember hearing Tony Burke interviewed a while ago saying that as a white male, he would never experience racism in this country, but he could imagine how awful it would be. Experiencing it firsthand gave me a new perspective on how hard it must be sometimes for our Indigenous Australians and our new Australians to feel comfortable and accepted in the communities in which they live, particularly in our regions. We often had international visitors to our home growing up, so I always had a lot of respect for those from other countries. But this gave me a deeper empathy for our Indigenous Australians and our new Australians, knowing firsthand how awful it feels. When I was first elected to Esperance Council in 2017, not only did I have to listen to criticisms of Labor's targets for 50% women, but also negative talk about our first Australians. It made me passionate to work hard. It took 3 motions to council in 2 years, but we now proudly fly the Aboriginal flag outside our council offices. We have a fantastic progressive council now in Esperance that I'm sad to leave, who are working hard for the people of Esperance, and I would like to say a big thank you to my fellow councillors, particularly our amazing Shire President, Ian Mickle, for standing up for our town and working hard every day for the best for our community. I'm so very grateful that we have this Labor government elected in Western Australia who are committed to standing up not only for equality for women, but for diversity in the party to represent the diverse community we have here in Western Australia. I feel we are very fortunate in Australia. This country has a long history of immigration, and I strongly believe that gives us a competitive advantage. With so many diverse views, the range of knowledge that is brought into this country, and the ability for us to tap into ideas from around the world and put them together for a better solution. I would also like to acknowledge the wisdom we have amongst the traditional owners of our land and how long this has gone undervalued. I'm honoured to be part of this government with all they are doing for our traditional owners, with initiatives such as the move towards joint management, and I feel privileged to be part of this 41st Parliament, where, for the first time, we had a Welcome to Country performed right here in this House to open our Parliament. With us all working together, we can continue to ensure we will remain a successful, globally competitive leading country. Esperance has been a fantastic place to raise our children. Toddlers roaming free in the grocery store, helping to shop with little worry for their safety. Spectacularly white sandy beaches with turquoise water all to yourself. An amazing Instagrammable bike ride to school every day with a stop to watch dolphins and whales. Weekend boat trips to our secret lagoon where the Easter egg hunts were throwing Easter eggs overboard and handing out a mask and a snorkel. Free-range kids, they were called by those visiting from the city. If I could fault it at all, sun-damaged kids. No matter how hard you try, that Esperance sun will get you. Stress over your son that hits the surf before 6 a.m. and who is sometimes still out on dark, with way too many white shark sightings and brutal aggressive attacks off Esperance. Dangerous regional roads where you know you risk your family's life each time you step in the car for the 7-hour drive to Perth is really the only option, with a family of 5 and airfares to Perth that cost more than going to Sydney. I'm thankful for a government that is investing in our regional roads. It's funny, after 20 years of travel, it's really only within this last term of government where we started to think perhaps we should leave time for roadworks. And the recent commitment this government has made to reasonably priced airfares has been a welcome in our regional towns. I have spent much time over the past 20 years travelling throughout the agricultural region, and one thing that upsets me is the continual degradation of our natural environment. With so much clearing already for our food production, there is less than half the natural vegetation remaining, with most of that fragmented, and the decline is still continuing. A large portion of our natural vegetation remaining that is not within our conservation estate is along our many road reserves, which are continually getting eaten up at an alarming rate, especially with all these regional roadworks, and they are in a shocking state. In some cases, the road reserves provide the only wildlife corridors linking these fragmented pockets of vegetation. Not only does a healthy, diverse road reserve provide great visual amenity to tourists, but it's important habitat for our native species. Perhaps we get too used to our current baseline, what we are used to, driving along, looking at vegetation in very poor condition, rather than considering what it could be and acknowledging just how much damage we have done. This land has been managed by the Indigenous Australians for tens of thousands of years. It must be so terribly upsetting for them to accept what we have done to our environment in such a short time. I'd like to recognise the fabulous work of Minister Dawson in his last term as Environment Minister. We have all heard about his great initiatives such as Containers for Change and the plastic bag ban, and it's commendable the work being done under Plan for Parks to increase the conservation estate. And we now have ministers responsible for climate action in the hydrogen industry. But I really hope we can do more this term to focus on areas outside the conservation estate and stopping the decline there. If we want to secure our biodiversity for future generations, we need a plan to get there. It will be a challenge, particularly with the added issue of climate change we now face. It's great to hear that this government is currently developing a draft vegetation policy to be released for community consultation in the coming months. My speech would not be complete if I didn't raise the important issue of white sharks on behalf of my community in Esperance. When I first met Mark, an abalone diver, 20 years ago, shortly after white sharks became protected in 1999, we never gave much of a thought to sharks. Mark had dived with no protection for years. But since I met him, he has had over a dozen encounters with white sharks while diving and has dived using the protection of a hydraulic shark cage for almost a decade now. At least he can drive his metal cage at the sharks to move them on. Esperance has had the most fatal white shark attacks in the last 5 years of anywhere in Australia. 2 last year alone. 2 highly respected locals have been lost. And we can't forget the devastating loss of Letitia Brower in 2017 while holidaying in Esperance with her family. That attack followed the brutal attack on Sean Pollard in 2014. These attacks have significantly impacted our community, and in particular our surfing community. Grown men no longer have the courage to undertake the sport they so enjoy, and in this hectic modern world that is so important for their mental health. The community has been lobbying hard since 2017 to be heard, for support and for action following white shark sightings and attacks, to provide confidence not only to our community, but also those across our state thinking of coming to Esperance, that there has been action taken to make it safe to get back in the water. I look forward to working with the new Fisheries Minister, Don Punch, to continue to address this important issue for my community. We must have an evidence and science-based approach to reducing the risk of shark attacks. I've been involved with the Ocean Safety Group in Esperance since its inception in 2017 after the devastating fatal white shark attack on a Letitia. The Ocean Safety Group has worked hard to drive real and relevant research on white sharks with a view to helping to improve beach safety. The group has installed a network of shark receivers around the Esperance Bay, tracking white shark movements to learn more about their behaviour. I'd like to thank former Fisheries Minister Peter Tinley for his commitment to assisting the group with their data analysis and working closely with the group to address our issues. I look forward to continuing this work with Minister Punch. The group also has a new research project underway, which will map in detail the nearshore areas along our coastline with a view to better understanding how the underwater topography may contribute to shark visitation. There's always more to do when it comes to sharks, but it's easy to forget the huge progress made during the last term of government. We have a great Shark Smart app with over 60,000 users where we're alerted instantly to shark detections and sightings. We have a network of real-time satellite receivers linked to alarms around our coastline centred on popular surf beaches. We have extended helicopter patrols over the summer season. I commend the work done by our fisheries research team, but we can do more, and I'm confident we will continue to work with affected communities like Esperance to address these important issues. I welcome the recent announcement by Minister Punch for a $5 million boost to shark hazard mitigation measures. Speaking of sharks, I'd like to talk for a few minutes about an amazing wild place off Esperance called Salisbury Island, home to the rare and endangered black-flanked wallaby surviving out on this small island, home to our endangered Australian sea lions and housing the biggest colony of long-nosed fur seals in the state. A wild island sitting out near the continental shelf, an amazing place. My husband came across Salisbury Island during his thousands of hours of diving underwater off our southern coast and discovered the fact that it was a white shark hotspot. We set up a non-profit organization called Finding Salisbury to work to protect this amazing place and keep it wild. We knew with it being a white shark hotspot, it would eventually draw international attention, and as it has, so we knew the importance of getting on the front foot to ensure its protection for all Australians. We feel privileged to have an organization that is protecting a wild location, when often our land care and environmental groups are about rehabilitation and trying to put things back like they once were. We have received global recognition with Salisbury Island designated a Hope Spot by Mission Blue, an organization seeking to protect the diversity of the world's oceans. We have worked hard to drive world-leading, non-invasive research here. We are fortunate to have a wild place we can learn about natural white shark behaviour, particularly in light of the issues we face with regards to shark attacks in Australia, but I believe we need to tread carefully to limit our impacts. But alas, Esperance is just one regional community fighting to be heard in the corridors of State Parliament, and I've been elected to represent the agricultural region, where there are many more regional communities, all with their own issues and needs, and all wanting to be heard. The agricultural region has over 60 local governments with over 50 community resource centres dotted across the nearly 300,000 square kilometres. As we now head into a discussion about electoral reform, we need to think carefully about what it means to be able to properly represent those living regionally across our vast state. I'm hoping we will continue to address the many issues facing regional Western Australia, and it's pleasing to know that this government, in its last term, invested more money in the regions than any other government in history. We are seeing the results on the ground with important roadworks across our state, improvements in the facilities for our emergency services, the school maintenance program, investment in school STEM facilities, and hospital upgrades across our state. Particularly, I would like to note the great job our emergency services are doing to help develop practical, tailored fire response vehicles for the regions. But there's more to do with respect to encouraging people to live and work in our regions, making our regions a place everybody can feel welcome, from our Indigenous to our new Australians, ensuring we are supporting our towns to be individual and unique and develop in the way they want to develop, and achieving the same level of services we have in our cities, and perhaps considering how we can make these services more streamlined and easier to access. The past year has been positive for visitation for our regions with respect to border closures and the stop to international travel, but there's still more to do to stop the decline in our small towns. There are many historic country pubs and hotels in many of our regional towns, highly valued by their local communities. in disrepair and in need of a new injection of life, yet the money is never going to be there to help refurbish these iconic places without our help. Dumble Young, Tamble Up, spring to mind. It would be great to have a program to help revive these old historic pubs and hotels for these communities and for tourism. They make uniquely West Australian stopping points to break a long drive and would help achieve more visitation to these regional communities, injecting much-needed money into the local economies. I was very pleased to see this recent significant state government commitment towards the historic Carnarvon Timber Jetty. I know that commitment means so much to that community, so thank you. It has been heartbreaking to see firsthand the impact demolition of highly valued heritage assets have on our long-standing community members, particularly those older members who have contributed so much to the development of Western Australia throughout their lifetime. It's been 32 years since there has been a Labour office in Esperance, and for long-time Labour supporters like my friend Dale Piercy, who helped pack up the Esperance Labour office back in 1989, these are exciting times. I'm excited for the day I can open the doors down there, and we will again be better able to serve the people in the far reaches of the agricultural region. I've realised that I'm different from some people in Esperance, not because I was born Canadian, but because I have Labour values. Fairness, equality, compassion, equal opportunity, and I'm thankful to my family for instilling these values in me. I sometimes wonder why I have the privilege to be here when there are over 100,000 voters in the agricultural region, many just as worthy as me. But maybe I'm lucky to have sensed that this government was on the right track, and there was an opportunity and I grabbed it. I feel it is an important lesson for my children. Don't follow the herd, follow your heart. You never know where it might lead you. It wasn't easy at first standing up publicly as Labour in Esperance, somewhere where you generally wouldn't admit to anyone that you voted Labour, but I'm happy to say at the recent election we won all 3 booths in Esperance. Now, I can't take all the credit for that, as we all know the amazing job done by Premier Mark McGowan and his Labour team in keeping us all safe, but it sure is great to be out in the regions, open and proud to be Labour, and inspiring other people to embrace our Labour values. In closing, I'm honoured to be part of this team of positive, hard-working people committed to building a better Western Australia for our children and their future, and I look forward to the next 4 years.